Joe, it is good to talk to you again. How are you doing today, man?
Really well, man. Good to be here, Ryan. Excited to have a chat.
Yeah, maybe give a quick introduction about who you are, what you do, your background a little bit, and then we'll hop into it.
Absolutely. Yep. Joe Benson, co-founder of Eversight, been in digital marketing for a little over 20 years now. Had a few different business models along the way and a few different brands, but one company that's just kind of evolved over time. So we do full service digital marketing, SEO, PPC, social ads. But our core product is this website as a service. It's kind of a spin on, the digital agency website product
Hmm.
and has some unique aspects to it. Instead of a big hefty upfront fee, it's a monthly subscription that kind of turns it into a relationship as opposed to a one-time transaction. So that's us in a nutshell.
Okay, so website as a service. When I hear that, I go, we're
Yep.
talking WordPress, Webflow, GoDaddy. Like, what does
There
that
you
even
go.
like? What does that mean? Because if you're
Yeah.
not in the website business, what does that mean?
Great question. Great question. So no, WordPress, Webflow, Squarespace, these are content management systems or in some cases DIY platforms, right? Where you
Hmm.
log in and you build your own website on a platform that they provide to you. And those are great for some people. I'm not here to say those don't have their place. We're a little different in that we handle everything for you. So we have our own platform, but we build you a completely custom website. This isn't a template-based website that you pick a Squarespace template and then you customize a few things. It's totally custom from the ground up, and we're with you along the way every single month as you grow. Unlimited updates are included in the subscription, for free. That's just part of the subscription.
Hmm.
And you have access to our team. We've got a team of over 20 professionals in the space that are proactively, taking a look. Hey, we're getting a lot of traffic to this page. What can we
Hmm.
do to beef that up? Or how can we improve the homepage or add a special to the homepage, add the new staff members? Those sorts of things are just all included, as
Hmm.
opposed to you having to do it yourself or pay a la carte by the hour every time you want an update.
Yeah. So, how do you determine when it's time for someone to go with something like you're doing versus a Wix or maybe just some, a Squarespace or GoDaddy or WordPress, whatever? They kind of build it themselves because I want to talk about SEO in a second, but just the general layout and stuff. Because early on, most people are just trying ideas, trying to make sure it works, get their branding right and all that stuff. So, how do you advise people on when they should go with something more custom or not?
Great question. So a big part of it has to do with what stage you're in. If you're a startup and 399 a month is a scary number, right? And you don't have a whole lot of other headaches to deal with, and you're just kind of getting started, and you need a digital brochure, something simple.
Mm-hmm.
Go with a DIY solution,
Mm-hmm.
right? Save yourself a few dollars and let that get you going. You could bring in a professional to help with some of it, but mostly you're going to do that on your own. I would recommend. Once you kind of hit, we like to say we're the perfect fit for the 1 million in revenue to 10 million in revenue kind of
Mm-hmm.
range.
Yeah.
Once you get to the point where you're ready to grow, really is what it comes down to, right? And you're like, okay, this three-pager website isn't doing the job. I need something that creates a clear funnel with the right messaging that knows my market, that has marketing psychology background to really drive leads. I'm ready to
Mm-hmm.
drive leads, and kind of the fundamental reason that we went with this model, we changed this model, was so that people that have 10 or 12 grand that they would typically throw at a custom website don't blow it all in the beginning on a
Mm-hmm.
website that just sits there. Instead, they pay just $3.99 a month for the website, and it leaves the rest of their budget up front to go towards marketing. And that marketing can be SEO, PPC. It just depends on what the right fit is, depending on your audience, depending on your market. But what that allows people to do is make a bunch of money from their
Right.
website and make it an asset and not just this one time lump sum cost.
Right. And so when you mentioned like SEO, PPC, maybe obviously those are kind of terms most people have heard of, but how do you think about them? Because there's local SEO, there's not local SEO, obviously, and so PPC. So is there certain industries those things work better, certain applications? Like how do you categorize that stuff internally?
Yeah, great questions. So, SEO in general is this massive, broad term, right? And you could get one-time SEO done by some guy for $300, or you can pay tens of thousands a month and go crazy with SEO, right? And everything in between, and it's all considered SEO. The strategy that's going to work for your business is going to depend on a lot of factors. If you are a local service business, for instance, then you're absolutely going to want to have a ton of reviews. You're going to want to have your Google business profile optimized. You're going to want to build content on your website that focuses more on local service type keywords, and build out the funnels to drive local traffic to your business. If you are, a national e-commerce, on the other hand, your Google My Business profile really doesn't matter, right?
Yeah.
Nobody cares about that. You're going to have to start doing a whole lot more in SEO, to try to show up for national keywords, people searching anywhere. We had one client at one point, Decorators Warehouse is the name of the client, and they are a brick and mortar Christmas store.
Yeah.
And they're in Dallas, Texas, one of the biggest Christmas stores in the country, and they wanted to go online. And so we asked who they wanted to compete with, and one of the people they said was Amazon. We're like, okay, hey, look, we can do that for you, but here's what it's going to take. And that was a huge client with a huge budget, but we actually ended up outranking Amazon for Christmas ornaments, right?
Wow.
But it takes a lot of backlinks. It takes a lot of strategy and thinking through. It's not something that you're going to want to DIY, if you know what I mean, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
So where does AI play into the SEO game? Because, if you're relatively close to me, I'm in Granbury. Ranking in Granbury, when my son and I did a little junk removal business for a little while, and ranking for that was pretty easy. My wife has a mobile laundry business, pretty easy to get clients. Like, she doesn't even do stuff anymore because it's 60,000 people in the county. It's not hard. In Fort Worth, it'd be a lot harder. So
Sure.
How does that come in? Like, your location, understanding, if you're in somewhere Hood County like I am, or Fort Worth, it's a lot different too, I'm sure. And so
Totally
back to AI,
different.
like, how much can AI help you analyze those kind of things?
Can it help you analyze that? Certainly can help. Market research using AI is something that we use now. A lot of people using. You really need to use it.
Yeah.
Whether you're doing SEO or not, you can learn a lot from AI. It has a lot of knowledge you can share. It can help you determine how competitive a market is, right? But ultimately, the simple answer is the more competitive a market, the more oomph you're going to need. And that means, do you have a business that's been around for 20 years, or are you a startup? Has your website existed, even if not great, has it existed for a long time? How many Google reviews do you have? If you have 2, you're in trouble. If you got, 325, you're in decent shape. All these things play a role. And it's not that you can't creep up over time with a new business in these markets. You can. But it's really a function of time at that point. How long is it going to take me to catch up with all of the people that have been around for so long?
Right.
As opposed to if you're, a smaller, in a smaller market, there's less competition, right? You just don't have as much to fight against. And a lot of times you can get somewhere pretty quickly there. In terms of AI and how in SEO, how they, are merging, a lot of times people are using AI as their search engine these days.
Yeah.
You just Google, hey, what about this or that? What's a good service company? I've used it to look up company names in certain areas. And we found that, certainly if you're doing well in Google, you have a better chance of doing well in AI. But there are also some technical sides to it. There are these things called metadata or schema data that you can embed inside of a website underneath what people see that just hints to LLMs that, hey, I'm important for this, right? You want to establish yourself as an authority, and you do that with content, you do that with quality FAQs, you do that with some of the technical tricks behind the scenes, and all those things add up to, with links back to your website, those things add up to an LLM finding a lot of information to support you as an authority, and therefore when people search things related to your industry, especially your geography, you tend to show up.
Yeah, I'm curious your thoughts here, because for like local stuff, I'm assuming you mentioned the Google My Business reviews and stuff like that. I don't know, maybe AI can figure out a way to rid that, but for the next 20, 30 years, it just seems like hey, if you want to figure out what the best restaurant is, reviews are going to be a huge thing because it's just going to want to go that national stuff. I'm not sure how that's going to work. Maybe it's more of that content stuff. It's obviously it's hard to predict where we'll be in 20 years. Stuff's happening so fast right now. But,
no
but what are
doubt.
you seeing? Because it feels like there's maybe two different paths here. Where if you're kind of a local service provider, staying focused on the local SEO, the reviews, stuff like that is so important. But if you're national, is it that kind of underbelly stuff you were talking about that you really got to work on the backlinks?
I think if I could, use one phrase to summarize it all, it would be social proof, right?
Okay. Yeah.
So reviews are social proof for a local business. That's how people, believe that you are trustworthy, that you provide a good service, that sort of thing. That's also what Google uses in a lot of cases to determine if that's the case and whether to show you or not. Social proof for a national brand online would be things like, how often are you cited in a blog post somewhere else? How many other websites are linking back to you? Are you ever trending on social media? Do you have a ton of content that really sounds like it's authoritative on a particular topic? All these sorts of things are different types of social proof that ultimately, that's really the name of the game. How can I prove that I'm the guy that should show up?
Yeah, and if you can figure out how to rank high now, theoretically, would you agree that AI might rank you long term, which means that you can get a competitive advantage? So if you can rank high now or learn how to rank high under the, we'll call it the old Google ecosystem. Hey, call it old. If
Yeah.
you can figure out how to rank high or rank in Google at some on some keywords or whatever, then ChatGPT or Perplexity or something like that might start to rank you. And then that's a unique audience, right? Because if Perplexity or ChatGPT tells me something, I almost take it as gospel. Like I almost believe it. And
Everybody
so-
does, right?
Yeah, and so if you can rank in that, it would seem that you'd have a huge competitive advantage.
There's no doubt about it, especially for the short term. The only AI that I'm aware of that is like up to the minute is Grok, right?
Yeah.
So they pull a lot of stuff from X to kind of get up to date. But there's no doubt that historically there's more information about businesses, and so the sooner that you rank, the more likely that you're going to do well in AI. Yes, absolutely is the case.
Do you? So I've used Grok some. I don't use it a ton. Um, do you like using Grok? Because I find it to be, maybe it's just I'm more used to ChatGPT or Claude, but it's okay.
So the Grok 3 beta, if you have access to that, I found that's pretty impressive.
Okay.
But I still use ChatGPT very regularly. I also use Claude. What I like to use Grok for is if it's something that I know is dependent on up-to-date information,
Okay.
that's when I go to Grok. So if
Yeah.
it's something that happened 2 days ago and I want to like do something with AI related to that,
Yeah.
I'm going to Grok.
Going to Grok. Yeah.
Yeah.
So what I'll do is, and I don't need the new stuff maybe in the same way that you're using it, so I can see that because Grok obviously has all the Twitter or X or whatever we're calling it, information
Yeah,
as well.
data.
Yeah, and so that's a huge competitive advantage. But I'll use ChatGPT, and then now Claude has internet access, and then I'll use DeepSeek as well, and I'll just run the same. I'll run the same prompt through them just to see
Absolutely.
what it says, and like if I'm thinking about a business idea or a marketing idea or a planning idea or or how to do something or automation idea, whatever it might be, I'll just run. And then if it gives me the same answer 3 times, I feel pretty good that that hey, I've got it. If it does it, then I'm starting to say, well, this said this. I'll tell it. What about this? And ask it this, and it is mind blowing just how
It's
great it is.
mind blowing, man. It is mind blowing.
I talk to AI more than I do humans. It's not even close.
And we're just talking about text. I'll tell you something that just was launched recently. ChatGPT's new image generation in the 4.0 model.
Yeah.
Unreal. So we have, just speaking about websites, historically getting good quality photos from clients is virtually impossible. I mean, they just don't want to spend the money. And so you sometimes can get some photos, but a lot of times it's just, a halfway done portrait photo of the staff. Well, what we've done recently is we've chopped out a staff member. We give that to the new image gen inside of ChatGPT 4.0, and we ask it to take that person and have them do an action within that business. It is mind-blowing, the result. I'm actually going to post on X about it. It is crazy how good it is. It looks just like the people. It's really impressive. It's going
And
to change
so
the game.
I don't know if I have. I can show it. I had now Grok was the leader for a while in images.
Mm-hmm.
I had it image generate some images of like King Henry, and I was doing this little mini thing on darts, and so like it was pretty crazy how good its images were. ChatGPT, to your point, wasn't that great. But
No.
I ran a test, and I posted one on Twitter of some. I had it create some dark side, the far side comic strips, and so I posted
Okay.
one on Twitter, and it's okay. But I saw someone this morning like, oh, you should be posting AI videos and photos, and I'm not an AI photo video guru. That's not my thing. I get fooled by them and
Sure.
stuff like that. But I think it's almost kind of silly to go, oh, ignore this because it might not be there today, and it's not there potentially if you're on Twitter all day long. But grandma, who's not, she probably has no idea.
Oh my goodness, you're so right. Look, I've got smart business friends that are not in the tech world at all that have never heard of ChatGPT to this
Oh
day.
yeah, oh yeah,
I
oh
had a
yeah,
friend last week that they're like, "What's ChatGPT?"
yeah.
Right? There's no doubt about it. The opportunity to leverage this stuff, is right there in front of you, and it needs to be leveraged. Now, I think there has to be a human element to it. That's
Sure.
important for our company. We're not going to have AI doing everything because it's not there yet, and there's something special about the human touch reviewing things and making sure they're right. But in a scenario where a client can't give you good photos and you take an actual client photo of the guy who works
Mm-hmm.
there and put him in a position where he's working on something as a technician, that's a slam dunk. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? That's really hard to beat.
Well, okay, so you probably know this answer. I mean, when someone's on a website, how long are they on average actually on a specific page, just scrolling up and down? Like what, 2 or 3 seconds, maybe?
Totally depends on the website.
Okay,
But,
I get like an Amazon thing. You might be read reviews,
well,
but
yeah, as a general rule of thumb, you're looking at 3 to 10 seconds, right? If you can't capture their interest in the first few seconds, they're gone. If you do, you might get a few more seconds of them scrolling around before
Mhm.
they click to try to zone in on whatever
Right.
they're interested in, right? Yeah,
Yeah,
not long.
and the only thing I was getting at there is if you think about that, if you scroll past something and you spend 3 to 10 seconds on a web page, if it doesn't look terrible, it's probably not noticed. Now, if they're going to spend a few minutes there or whatever, and they might
You're
start digging
spot
in.
on.
Yeah.
Spot
So
on.
the
Yes.
test is like I got fooled on Twitter.
Yeah.
I don't know about a month ago. It looked like a whale ate a boat, and I was just scrolling on my phone. I was like, oh my gosh! I just reposted it. People are like, oh no, it's not. It's AI. And of course, when I took time to look, it was obviously you could see some hands and stuff that was AI. I was like, okay, cool, it's AI. But at a quick glance, it just got me. It's like, oh, okay.
No doubt about it. And
And
it's
I
going to
think,
get more people than it's not, for
oh
sure,
yeah,
especially in the case you're talking about. If it's even halfway realistic and doesn't look totally odd, people are going to scroll by it assuming that it's real.
well,
No doubt about it.
and how many people are using stock photos today and winning just off stock photos that
Yes.
we've all seen on different websites? Like if you
Yes.
listen to music for commercials, you'll hear the same tunes, and so there's kind of this weird feel, this weird vibe where if you're in certain parts of the world, I mean, like online, you almost pretend like, oh, this is so obvious, and it's really not. What I love is people talking about AI content because yesterday I downloaded the Sherlock Holmes books, and I had Claude rewrite a new story in Sherlock Holmes' voice, like new character, different characters. I haven't touched it. I haven't made any edits to it. It's just how it did it. And for a first pass, is it great? Yeah, compared to what I would do if I was trying to mimic his voice the first time. Yeah, it's pretty good. Would you want to publish it and sell it? Probably not. You want to make some edits and change it and tweak it to your point, the
Of
human
course.
touch. But
Yeah.
it's like, guys, if you think that this is way off, that kind of stuff, that's pretty low level stuff.
No doubt, and it's only getting better. And there's so many applications that are just worthwhile today. I'll give you one example of how I used AI yesterday to help my team. So we're migrating a big client over for SEO purposes, and they have a few different websites that are relatively large, and they have a bunch of links on pages on each of those websites that we're merging into one website. And so we need all of those old pages to redirect appropriately to the right page on the new website, right? And we don't have an exact one-to-one map because it's multiple sites. They have 3 about pages. They all need to go to our about page, etc. So I took the sitemap from each of their old sites, gave that to ChatGPT, gave it a list of all the new pages we're creating, and asked it to output a spreadsheet that had the old page mapped to the most relevant new page, and give that to me so that we could import it into our redirect database.
Yeah.
And in less than 30 seconds, what would have taken one of our team members an hour or more, less than 30 seconds, we've got it ready to go and we can migrate.
No.
That kind of stuff is just game changing.
And are you guys using like Operator or just the paid version, or where do you come in at on that?
Yeah, just the paid version, not
version,
Operator.
Yeah.
Yep.
I've seen Operator. I haven't had any use cases to actually use it myself, but I've seen ideas. It's like, oh man, this might work for this or whatever. So I'm always curious about it because I don't use it. I don't have any need for it. But it's crazy. So AI for content. What about for like writing content on websites and stuff? Because that's a big problem. For people that are like, oh my gosh, I don't want to write these blog posts and stuff. How good can it do for that?
Great question. So we use AI when it comes to content. We use AI as more of a content planner, right? We're using it to build out these content pillars. We review them all, make sure that they're in line, and to give us all these ideas. We still have content writers on staff. They may occasionally use AI to get a base or core, but we're in there making sure that it's got the right keywords, that it's structured, that it reads perfectly human, making sure that because some of the AI these days still is a little robotic. Right. Yeah. And so you have to be careful with the tone. You have to be careful with the audience that you're presenting the information to. So we make sure to cover all those bases. But there, again, is no doubt that there are efficiencies to be had there. And almost every level, if there's something to do with your business that is technical, AI can, in one way or another, make it more efficient. There's no doubt in my mind. It's really going to be game changing across the board.
There's no doubt. And it's one of those things where my advice, and I'm curious what your thoughts is there's Product Hunt or Once.ly or AppSumo. There's always new tools coming out, and you're going to spend forever trying to figure out which tool works best for you. But odds are, if you're not doing anything, just starting with Claude, Grok, if you have Twitter, ChatGPT, whatever, DeepSeek, just get in there and start asking questions. And like I did an experiment the other day where I wrote a prompt. And then I went to Googled the synonyms for the word, and I just got a list, and then changed the synonym like 4 different times. And I was like, oh, I like this prompt version better because oddly enough, that word, because that's the thing I think that gets lost is that when you're getting started, get good at it, learn it, but then realize that it assumes things based upon what you're saying. Just like you do when I'm asking you questions, you're assuming certain things, just like I'm assuming certain things. And so small tweaks can make huge difference in your results and outcomes.
Huge differences. Absolutely, no doubt about it. You can learn how to prompt better. The more practice you get, the better you'll get at it. But there's so many little tweaks. Asking it to return a response in a certain tone. Like before, it was easy to just kind of explain a tone. One of the hacks that I came across was to add at the end, in the tone of a text message to a friend. And if you wrote that, it just came out as if you're talking to somebody, the whole response. And it's really impressive for those sorts of things. No doubt about it. Another tip for it is I find that when you ask it, if you're doing something complex in particular, asking it to work in steps.
Oh, yeah.
You get much better results.
Much better
as
results.
opposed to give me this huge thing out of this huge thing. Go step by step, and you're going to end up in much better results.
So I love that. I'm curious if you tried this. So I want you to do whatever step by step. Give the steps, and then before you get started, ask me 3, 5, 7 things you need to know about what I've just told you or about me to make sure you do the steps right. Because again, it's going to assume certain things, and so if you ask it, what do you need to know about me before you get started, it will start asking you questions. You go, why did it not? Of course I meant that, or I didn't know about that. It's have you tried that?
Absolutely. It's amazing. And the other thing to add to that is, and I know it kind of feels funny, but if you describe to the AI what it is, what character it is, it actually, the way it works is it basically shifts the starting point of where the content's going to come from to more relevant groups of information. And so if you tell it, hey, you are an expert digital marketer with marketing psychology in your background, this, that, and the other, I want you to do X, Y, Z. Major differences in the results just by telling it what it is. Yep.
When I was coming up, I was learning AutoCAD, and my dad was like, hey, the best way to learn is by just watching other people do it because they're going to do stuff and press buttons differently and use the keyboard, the mouse, and in ways that you wouldn't think. I think prompt engineering is very similar, which is, you're gonna say something. Oh yeah, that's a good point. It's like there's you need to start, you need to dabble, and then there's free prompts everywhere online, like
Everywhere.
you can,
Endless
I will
free
retweet
prompts.
you. I will retweet and like and comment to get prompts just to see because there's a gazillion ways to prompt stuff, and like just that
Yes.
experiment on the synonyms the other day was like, oh man, I've tried different words, but I never thought about the fact of synonyms and how they can actually really impact what it thinks I mean because and it did. It gave me different results, and so um, I think there's kind of this almost arrogance of like, well, I can prompt this thing. Like, psh, man, I can spend hours just hearing people talk about prompts because the way they structure, it, the words they use, and how long they are. I've heard debates over how long the prompt should be, and so I think that you're spot on, and just get in there, start with it, get the free prompts, start learning because a few months ago people were debating that prompt engineering is going away, and we're not there yet. That doesn't seem to be true.
I don't think so. Not yet. I mean, look, these things are clearly getting smarter and smarter and smarter. And at some point, you may not need to, engineer your prompt. But it's still got a little ways to go. As exciting as it is and as much as it can do, it is not perfect yet. But it's darn near perfect in some instances.
No, well, in just one example, because a little bit about my health stuff. When I was going through all that, we go get test results. We can upload it into ChatGPT and say, "I'm a layman. Speak to me like a layman about what this means," because it's got all these fancy words, and it'll tell me this is what it means. It's like, when I go to the doctor's appointment now, I can actually
Have a conversation about it, yeah.
instead of going, what were the results? Or spending 40 hours on Google trying to figure out what these words mean.
Yes.
And so there are countless use cases, and I think that's the thing. I'm not sure. I'm curious on the prompt engineering if it will ever go away, because if you think about like website stuff, to build one today, like with Wix, is way easier than it was in 1998, right? It's just way easier.
For sure.
But there's still this complex portion, kind of like what you guys are doing, where so you have the Wix, which is more custom, like drag and drop, but then there's what you guys are doing, which is probably a little bit more custom. And so I would suspect that AI is going like that, where there's going to be tools that are more drag and drop for the average consumer, but the prompt engineering, the better you can get at that, it's probably not going away. I don't know if ever, because yes, it might learn, but the better you can learn to talk to it now, I don't know if that ever goes away.
No doubt about it. I think that, one good example of this is developers, right? So programmers, what AI is who they're going to hurt is the lower level programmers, the ones who can do more of the basic things. It's not going to replace your top level engineers. It's just going to enable them. They're going to be able to do things way faster, but they still have to know what to prompt and how to connect the dots. Whereas a junior engineer is not going to be able to do the same thing as a senior engineer just because conceptually they don't understand it, right? Same thing in marketing or websites. You can go to Wix right now and build out a website, but is it going to be backed by, messaging that has marketing psychology built in and people that know how to drive people through a funnel and make them click a call to action and actually drive leads? Now, it might look beautiful, but if it's not saying the right things to the right people, then it's worthless, right? This idea that if you build it, they will come is just totally false, right? You've got to make sure that it says the right things, but then you have to drive traffic to it as well. That's sitting out on an island by itself and nobody's seeing it. It doesn't do any good for you either, right?
That's right. So you mentioned website design. I want to get your take on this because do you follow Brent with Design Joy on Twitter?
I know Brent. Yeah,
Okay.
I'd say I know him. I've talked to him before. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did you watch his battle with Lovable a few weeks ago?
No.
Okay.
I didn't see
so
that.
Lovable built a website, and he built a website. And it was like a 45-minute or 2-hour, whatever it was, this quick sprint they had to do. And at the end of it, it was interesting because his won. But for my takeaway was that the way they were grading those websites didn't apply to most people because they're talking about all these very sophisticated design things. And so I'm wondering, I'm looking at it going, I wouldn't really care about this because, maybe some people do. If you're in like advanced AI robotics, which is kind of the thing, maybe you need to have like the curvature of the button be certain, but I don't really care.
Yeah.
How important is stuff like that for businesses? Because I do see designers get in there and they'll start talking about stuff. It's like, do people really care? Again, if you're a top level company, put them to the side, but just the average company, do they 1 to 10 million? Do they really care that your website's it doesn't need to look trashy, of course, but like it has that level of detail that those guys are kind of those designers are talking about.
I think it depends on your brand, right?
Okay.
If you're Apple or you're Nike or you're these guys, you're trying to position yourself as the company in your lane, right? And so you need to be polished. People expect polished. But if you're the roofer down the road, or the pest control guy, should you have a nice professional website? Absolutely. And is it bad that it's really nice looking? No, of course not. But what's way more important than the perfect look is the perfect messaging and the perfect structure and social proof up top and all these types of things that really send the right messages. Aesthetic is one thing that sends messages, right? And it's an important one, right? That you're put together. It's not the only thing, though. The other things that people are looking for is how can I trust you, and what are the ways that you can show them trust, social proof, tell them that you'll solve the problems that they have, right? All those things play a big role, and a bigger role for the smaller businesses, like we were just discussing, for sure. Yep.
So you mentioned backlinks a few times. I want to talk about that for a second. What is your advice to someone on going on podcasts, writing, not ghostwriting blogs, but writing on blogs on those sites? How important is stuff like that to start getting backlinks, or is it just writing content that people will like for journalists or whatever, that they might backlink to? Using, was it Hero or whatever it is that they'll, you can give them a quote or whatever. How do you go through that stuff to get backlinks?
Yeah, there are a lot of different ways to do it, right? So you can do guest posting. There's this website called featured.com where you can answer questions that journalists want answered. And if they select yours, then you'll be featured on a website article with a link back to your profile. There are tons of different methods to getting backlinks. You have to be careful. There are also what we call black hat methods of getting backlinks, right? And so those are like link farms, they call them, where it's just websites specifically made only to link back to places. Those can be dangerous and ultimately get you dinged. But the way backlinks work, different websites are more valuable to get a link from than others. We call that domain authority or page authority. And you can think of it almost as a vote of confidence for you in support of your company. And Google looks at it and they think, okay, how many votes does this website have, right? And then not only how many votes, but how important are the people that are voting for you, right? If I get an endorsement by, the president, that's a huge vote of confidence, right? Same thing for if you were to get a link back from some massive website that's got a huge domain authority. And so Google puts all these things together and is a huge, actually, big factor in their ranking. In particular, we find for national type of terms, but also for the heavier markets, right? The big markets. If you're in a smaller market, backlinks can be pretty expensive because they actually require quite a bit of effort. There's a lot of networking with people and reaching out for blogs and all that sort of stuff. So it takes effort. We do offer it as part of our service. But you don't necessarily have, where I'm from, a small town called Ponchatoula, Louisiana, there's not a whole lot of competition out there.
Right.
I might not need backlinks if I at least have signed myself up for the obvious directories and I've got good Google reviews and I've got a website that has good content. I can probably rank without 1,000 backlinks, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But as you get to, a Houston or a Dallas or an LA and you're in a competitive market, they become increasingly important.
So one thing I've wondered about is, let's say you have kind of a national company or whatever. It doesn't mean you have offices across the U.S., but your audience is national. Your clients can come from anywhere. Is it worth it to try to almost have local keyword targeting, because you can rank there easier in hopes of ranking the overall site? So take some random small city in Texas that has 1,000 people. There's no keywords for that, but you could rank there pretty easy, and then build up a system that ranks all the way up to Houston or Fort Worth or Dallas or whatever. So you can work like that, but take that national. Is that something that's doable, or is that not the right way to do it?
You could do that. It would depend on, who you're targeting. One example, a client of ours is Apple Tree Business Services, Patrick Dichter. You may have seen him
Yeah.
on X. Okay. So he's a client of ours, and he has, they're based in New Hampshire, but they'll do accounting services for anybody. And so one word that we've been starting to work on, don't go Google it yet. We don't rank yet. We just started. But it's a small business accounting company, right? And so he could, and we already do, target his local cities, right?
Right.
So those we're ranking, right? That kind of thing. But as he expands nationally, do you want to start targeting a small, region-based place? I would say you can. There's not, you're not going to rank as well for bigger cities if you don't have a physical presence. When you're going for a physical term without a physical presence and you're across the country, him going for Houston, for instance, that's going to be pretty tough. Now, if he opened up a satellite office in Houston, it would become easier.
Right.
But showing up for the phrase without geography attached to it is something that is doable, right? And that's something that we're working towards. And that has volume, a search volume for a lot of different businesses like that, at least.
So what are your thoughts on, just to use when he's Patrick, let's use his name, on the personal brand versus the company brand? Because it's like, okay, well, if you got to devote time or resources or hire someone like you guys, how do you balance those things out?
That's a good question, because I have that problem for myself with Eversight on X, right?
Yeah.
I think it really it depends on the platform you're on. So X is a personal platform. Businesses just don't do well on X unless you're already big and established, like I said, the Apples and Nikes and that kind of thing. And so bringing a more personal approach is going to give you followers, and you can still pitch, hey, this is what I do in my real world job. And I think there's a lot of value there. If you go to other platforms, LinkedIn, for instance, I think maybe you could have a little more success pushing your brand itself in terms of the social media marketing. But it's hard, for a tax accountant in New Hampshire, Patrick, for instance, for him to get Apple Tree to have a ton of followers, they'd really have to be pumping out some valuable information on a regular basis. And it would be more difficult because the business doesn't have as much personal side to provide as a human being on his own does, right? So it's harder to connect. I'd recommend, if you're going to get on X, pushing your personal brand and just tying it to your company. That's what I've done, and so far it's been pretty successful for us. Patrick's done the same. I know there's many others.
Yeah. No. It's one of those things to where, people talk the big debate about personal brand, and people want to buy from people, and I agree with all of that. I don't think that's untrue for sure. But at the end of the day, your personal brand has to monetize the business, or the business.
That's the key. That's the key. It has to. If it doesn't,
no one cares.
Absolutely not.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly. Exactly.
So it's one of those things. It's like, okay, well, you got to balance.
It's one of those things you have to kind of find your the way to blur the lines. Like in my case, I do free website roasts on X.
Oh, cool.
Right. So
I haven't seen that. I missed that. I don't.
Yeah,
watch
I've
one.
probably done 100 of them. I'm surprised you haven't seen one.
I can't believe I missed them. Yeah, I'm stunned by this.
You go check. You'll see on my profile. I got a bunch of them down there. But yeah, so people will post their website link, in a comment, and I put it on a list, and then I'll go and give them a 5-minute video of what they're missing on their website or what they should consider changing. And it's free advice. I just give that to them. But 1 in 4, 1 in 5 reach out and are like, dude, you're right. I need to get a new website.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's a win-win. I don't mind providing the value for those that want to go do it themselves, those that end up wanting help. It just helps me establish trust with them. They understand, okay, this guy seems to know what he's talking about. He's got a big team behind him, that sort of thing. So blurring the lines with your personal brand and your company is key to making your personal brand work, for sure.
Yeah, and I'm sure there's people who don't put their website but watch your videos and go, oh, okay, this is who I want to work with because I like what he's saying here.
Yes, for sure. Yep. We
And
get them on a monthly basis. The lurkers. In
the
fact, I
lurkers.
had somebody
I
the
love
other
you,
day.
lurkers.
Yes,
That's where my
exactly.
clients where they come from. Lurkers.
It was an HVAC company. They're a client now, and um, called. Said he found me on Twitter. I tried to find this guy on Twitter. Took me a minute. 0 followers and following zero. Right?
Yeah.
Just
Just there.
no
Yeah.
profile pic.
Yep.
Right? And that's who it was. He just saw one of the videos and hopped on. So.
I had one time reach out and they wouldn't tell me their handle because they were a lurker and they didn't want any traction. They didn't want anything. They just wanted to be a
That's
lurker. And
That's
so
too good.
it was funny.
I
It's-
think a key point to that is I've actually blending the personal and business lines. I've actually had multiple people find my profile from a personal post. I posted about our sports shed. We built this kind of rec
Yep.
shed.
Yep.
So I posted about that a couple months ago and got I think 100,000 views somewhere in that neighborhood. And we had multiple people find my profile through that, see that I did digital marketing, and reach out and become clients. It's
That's
pretty
awesome.
wild how that can work. Yeah.
That's awesome. So, how do you think about talking about X or not or on X? I guess failures, successes, and stuff because that's always a delicate balance because there are there are contracts and there are things going on, so you can't say, "Oh, this client Bob was really mad at me today because Bob might get on X and you don't know if he has one or not. He might get on there and see it." So, how do you balance that out? Because you don't want everything to be rosy because it's business. Everything's not rosy.
Absolutely.
But you can't talk about stuff sometimes. So how do you go about that?
Redact it. You do your best to explain a situation without calling someone out specifically, in particular if it's negative. But you're right, it's real, and it's important to be real. If everything's always rosy, people aren't going to believe you, right? It's all about building social trust, social proof. So you got to put that stuff out there. I would say it also is a delicate balance with employees because you can't say certain things if you had an employee that you're not so happy with. Right? You can't just go blurt that out unless you've already told them that. So there is definitely a balance that has to be struck, but you figure that out pretty quickly. I have a few friends that have made a couple mistakes on that regard on X and have learned from it. But that's part of the game.
Yeah. I do see people on there. I try to. I need to talk probably more about the failures on X from time to time. But
everybody talks a little bit more about their wins than their failures, if we're honest, right?
Well, it's one of those things. Just like I've never seen your website roast, or maybe if I did, I forgot. It doesn't ring a bell. There's a realization that you start off kind of fearful that everybody's going to hate what you say, and then you realize that no one cares what you say, and so we kind of go through this phase of, well, I need people to care, so I need to tweet about something to care about, and so, how do I do that? And then you realize that they might not see everything, and so if you tweet about a failure, they might see that, and they might miss the good thing you tweet about, and so it becomes this really weird cycle. That's why I love the newsletter stuff because it's just there, like it's coming to you, and so
yeah.
But with X, or any LinkedIn or Facebook or whatever, you're just really dependent on what it promotes for you that day, especially if you're not very intentional on being on a list or the following tab or whatever, and so. I think that plays something into the psychology too, which is to go, will someone see the win if I post a failure?
Yeah, I think it's important for the failures to have a lesson or something that you took from it that's worth sharing.
Yeah.
More than just a complaint that you failed.
Yeah.
Because you're right. Otherwise, that might be the only thing they see, and next time they see your name, just pass right by you, right? So I think it is important to. You just got to be tasteful, right? And you learn. Post something that you would want to read. That's what I try to, stick by.
So we talked about X. I'm curious. Are you active on? I mean, I've got more followers on LinkedIn than I do on X. I hate LinkedIn. I'm trying to love it. LinkedIn. I'm trying to love you. I can't. Oddly enough, I got on Upwork and I was like, I wonder what's happening at Upwork because on X, you think about the 5 levels of awareness. On X, you've got a lot of people who are just unaware of what you do or if they have a problem that you can solve or stuff like that. But on Upwork, they're actually there. They actually have a problem. And it's been interesting just to kind of see people talk about their problems and stuff and stuff from there. So other than X, do you do stuff like Upwork and and post on LinkedIn or get on Reddit and try that or Facebook, or do you say, hey, no, we're gonna SEO and and X this thing?
We have social media profiles for Eversight
Mm-hmm.
on X, Facebook, LinkedIn, and we post on those regularly.
Mm-hmm.
I, like I was on X first just for personal reasons.
Mm-hmm.
I was a lurker for the longest of times. I like X. LinkedIn, I really struggle with. It feels like a bunch of sales faces. Everything, slammed with DMs endlessly. Although X is not so much better these days.
Yeah, it's getting worse. Yeah.
But yeah, I so to answer your question, I don't post on LinkedIn. I do check it occasionally. I have a bunch of connections on there. I have a profile that's up to date, that sort of thing. But I don't use it on a daily basis. Facebook I do, but just for personal stuff
Yeah.
more than business. Yeah, so X is kind of my
Have you
spot
tried like
for the.
Reddit? Have you dabbled there much?
I haven't. My brother has some, but
Yeah.
but less for the business.
Yeah.
My brother's my business partner, by the way. If I didn't make that clear. Yeah.
Yeah, I get on Reddit some, and it's like, okay, I can do, there's people talk about their problems a lot more in length than there are on X, and
Yeah, yeah.
and so, but you really can't pitch or promote, which I don't want to go there and just be like, hey, hire me, I don't want to do that. But then it's like,
Yeah.
you guys spend much time answering problems, and it's like, okay, you could do that. I'm not anti that. I haven't found someone. I would love to hear someone who's really had success on Reddit, because not with maybe a product or whatever, but actually a business service, just to go, okay, well, how do they do that? Because I've got on there a few times. It's better than LinkedIn, which to your point is just a lot of noise.
Yeah.
I'm trying to learn how to do that better because people say it's untapped. So I'm like, okay, maybe X is better because I can see a post about a website and I'm like, okay, cool, and then I can see a sports update that I care about, and then I can see something I don't care about, and I kind of the feed's so much faster. It's just
Yeah,
so
yeah, yeah.
much faster. I can kind of move through what I care
Agreed.
about, what I don't. So it's yeah, I don't know. If you were in charge of LinkedIn, what would you change?
Oh, well, I think you just hit the difference, right? X is not just about business.
Yeah.
LinkedIn is.
Yeah.
It's just a bunch of businesses posting about business, and X, you get a mix of everything you're interested in. So I think that would be the key change, but that's hard for LinkedIn because they're pitched as a business platform. So I don't know. I don't know if they can pivot.
Yeah. Okay, so if someone's listening right now, they go, okay, I've talked about AI, Reddit, X, whatever. I've got a website. I'm not at 1 million, so they're below kind of where you said that maybe they should call you at. What should they do? What are the common things you see for those businesses who are just getting started, trying to get up to that $1 million revenue range? What are some mistakes that they're making that you can help them out with?
Yeah, on their website specifically. So, one of the primary things, as mentioned a couple times, is social proof. If you don't have testimonials or average of 4.85, star rating on Google or a case study video or images, some sort of thing to prove that you can do what you say you can do, that's the number one thing you need to add to your website. And not all the way at the bottom, the last thing before the footer, right? Give me something that I can get to in that 3 to 10 seconds of scrolling that's going to make me. The second thing that we often see is the headline is just incredibly vague, right? Solutions for your business.
Yep.
It's like, well, what do you do? Like, I have no idea what you did, and I just read your main headline. Hit specifically a problem, make your target audience the hero, right? Talk about what you can do for them. You're the guide, they're the hero to solve their problem, type of thing, where for us it's websites that are made to improve. Let me just go read it instead of telling you. You can go to my website. I forget what it is on our headline. But anyway, the point is, be very specific with your offering. What you're going to say to people is important. Don't be real vague. Number 3, provide some sort of process outline. Right.
Okay.
Step 1, 2, 3. Make it where they know it's easy to work with you. Don't go crazy with this content and 78 services that you offer. Give me something simple. 4, make sure you've got a clear call to action. Right? So just having a hidden contact link in the menu that you have to open up probably isn't going to do the trick. Give somebody a phone number. Tell them why they should call you. Offer somebody a free demo. Offer somebody, a consultation, a free download of some sort that's valuable to them. Let them text you, right? Certain things like that that'll just make it easy for them to get in touch with you. On the same note, try to reduce the number of form fields that you have on your contact form. If you have to collect it, fine, collect it.
Yeah.
But if you don't need it to get contact information, remove it, right?
Well, think about what you said earlier, which is go back to you. Would you want to give your first name and your last name and your email and your phone number and your home? No, first name, email. Like, if you can get away with that, yes.
Exactly. The least amount of information you need to be able to get in touch with them and give them some sort of value, right? The only way I would recommend adding extra fields is if you are slammed with unqualified leads, right? You're just getting leads that are crazy, and you don't want to deal with a guy that only wants his grass cut because you're only doing commercial landscaping. Well, then ask what service they're interested in. And if they just hit grass cutting, then you know that they're not your guy.
Yep.
But, otherwise reduce the friction for somebody to get in touch with you. The last thing I'll say is good photography, right? AI can help with that some now, but nothing will speak more about who you are than showing who you are. And no faces, people start to have questions right away. If they don't get to see who you are, they wonder, who am I working with? Is this even a real company? How many people do they have on their team? Like, the questions, the doubts just start coming, and you don't want that. So those are some things that you could work on kind of on your own. That's the kind of thing that I cover in the website roasts, by the way. So if you want to check me out at Joe Benson X, at Joe Benson X on X, then you can see there's a ton of different roasts that you can check out if you just scroll through my profile.
We'll link to that, your website, and then your Twitter profile in the show notes or the newsletter, whatever I always say show notes. But have you read this book, Scientific Advertising by Claude Hopkins?
I have not, but it sounds like I should.
It's really good because it's written in the 20s, maybe the 1920s, not the 2020s. But
wow.
But some of the concepts and how they talk about it is it translates so well. But you said something a minute ago, and one of the things that struck me last night when I was reading it, there was an advertiser and he put, our net profit is 3%, and by saying that, it helped boost their sales. Because they weren't negotiating on price, because he already told you the net profit's 3%.
This is what I make.
This is what I make. And so I think we get caught up into all these fancy stuff and stuff like that. And sometimes something like that, like, it's like, no, I don't want my net profit to be 3%. So that's not me. That doesn't work for me. But that concept, like, oh wow, net, like, but I think it was B or something like that.
100. It's a perfect example, and I can give you another book if you haven't heard of it, or those that are listening. Story Brand by Donald Miller, or Marketing Made Simple is his follow-up to that. They're very similar books, but those are really good practical ways to implement this kind of thinking into your marketing and into your messaging. And so our whole team has read that book, and I'd recommend it for sure if you just kind of want to get the basics on how to structure your messaging.
Yeah, but you were just talking about just kind of how you position stuff, and it reminded me of that quote last night because it just struck me like, our net profit's 3%. No one today would say that. But if you did, you're not going to bargain on prices, because what are you going to do?
Absolutely.
And so
no doubt about it. And you also are thinking, okay, well, I'm also not getting hosed by this guy.
Right.
So you're just taking away walls, barricades. You just immediately knocking them down, which is great. That's what you're supposed to do. Yep.
Yeah, and if you counter that with what you were saying a minute ago, which is sometimes we put these big fluffy things that don't mean anything. Call us for a 7.675 minute diagnosis on something that doesn't mean anything, and it's big. You're like, what does that even mean? You know what that means. You know what that means right there when you read it. So anyways, Joe, it's good to connect with you. I've enjoyed getting to know you. What little I've gotten to know you over the time we've known each other, but it's always good to talk to you. Thanks for coming on the show.
Likewise.
Anything else before we go?
Thanks. No, man, I appreciate you having me. I think what you're doing is great. Love your newsletter and your content in general. So keep on keeping on.
Likewise, brother. We'll talk soon.
Thanks, man.